Are the Green Bay Packers actually going to do the things the fans have been clamoring for this season? We have some more evidence that they just might. Plus, who has the most to gain and who has the most to lose in the Packers preseason finale? All of that on today's show.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts. You will find Locked On Packers, the #1 Packers podcast on the internet. And the show for fans who know what happened. They want to know why and how. Thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. And today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Underdog Fantasy. Visit UnderdogFantasy.com or find them in the App Store and sign up with the promo code LOCKEDON to get your first deposit doubled up to $100. There was a piece in Packers Wire by Paul Brado, and he talked about the blitzing linebackers and how this has become just a regular part of what this Packers defense is trying to do. And that kicked something in my brain a little bit. And I remember the piece Rob Bukowski wrote about Russell Douglas and his conversations with Matt LaFleur, with Joe Barry, about wanting to play more press, wanting to play more man coverage. And what I said at the time was, look, it's not just about the coverages you're playing. It's not just about whether you're playing man or zone. Zone does not have to be passive. I've said this a million times. I feel like everydayers are probably sick of me saying it. Watch the 49ers play zone and tell me it's passive. It's not. But some teams need that mindset change. They need that little bit of extra motivation or just framing it the right kind of way to be maximally motivated, to be confident in the scheme. I think that's part of the thing. And Jair Alexander mentioned it. And we talked about it after the Russell Douglas comments that Jair Alexander and some of these secondary players, I don't think were super confident in some of the calls by Joe Barry. And I think Jerry Gray, one of the reasons why he's not back is either was he. And we don't know what happened behind the scenes, if there was undermining or anything going on like that. I don't want to speculate on it. But if they're doing that, and if there has been this communication where you have your best players talking to your coaches and saying, hey, I think this makes sense. And now you have this other piece of evidence. Oh, they're blitzing more often. Even if it's just practice, what you have is more evidence that the mindset of this defense is changing. Maybe has changed. And truly, it could be the case that the players, this was always their mindset, that they were playing in a way that didn't fit their specific mindset. I don't, frankly, care how much they blitz. In fact, in the second half of the season, without Rashawn Gary, they had a better pressure rate without Rashawn Gary and blitzing less often. They blitzed more often in the first half of the season and had Rashawn Gary, and yet got more pressure in the second half of the season. Now, part of that is they changed the coverages they were playing. They played more cover 2, more cover 6, less cover 3. And those And they were a little bit more aggressive at the line of scrimmage. As a result, cover 2 means you get to press. You get to be physical and reroute receivers at the line of scrimmage. Sometimes it's just a mindset difference. It's just the idea of saying, we as a group are going to dictate terms to you. That can be the entire difference in your ability to feel confident about what you're doing. And so I understand, wholeheartedly understand, any questions fans have about going, well, I will believe it when I see it. Absolutely, 100% believe it when you see it. Fine to wait. I am on board with you. I'm right there with you, in fact. But this other piece of evidence, I don't care, again, about the blitzing. I do think they should play more press. I do think they should play more man. They have the guys to do it. The blitzing thing is not about how often they blitz, really. It's not in a practical kind of way. Like, I don't think blitzing more will make them a better defense, per se. But it could be, and I think it's potentially likely the case, that if the players think or feel like they are blitzing more, that has tack-on mental benefits. That it gets everyone in this attacking mindset, this mindset of we are dictating terms to you. And as a defense, that's always where you want to live. Just like on offense, it's always where you want to live. And I have had this criticism of a lot of the too high defenses that you see, even if you are a really well-schooled too high defense. You are, in a lot of ways, reacting to what the offense is doing rather than creating the reaction. Now, that doesn't mean all of these too high defenses are bad or that I think I would play too high. But I think the idea of soft zone, rally and tackle, never do anything except on third down, like, that was really cool that Brandon Staley did that. That was what the Rams were. They went to the Super Bowl and they were vanilla on first and second down, played a ton of too high, played a ton of quarters. They never blitzed, except on third down. They blitzed like crazy, but they were able to do it because they had Jalen Ramsey in his peak and Aaron Donald, who's one of the best defensive players ever, who on first and second down can just go get you a bucket. What they do is different. It is a little bit like the rest of the league getting sucked into this idea of playing this Pete Carroll cover 3 scheme when no one has Richard Sherman, Earl Thomas, Bobby Wagner, Cliff Averill, Michael Bennett, KJ Wright, all those guys. You need the bodies. You need the players. And those guys played it more aggressively, more physically, and with more confidence than anyone else in football. It's just different. Chasing that idea is not going to work. It's why I felt like the Jim Leonard hire would have been so smart for the Packers, because he had that mindset. He wasn't just like, oh, we played too high to avoid XYZ. No, we play this way because we think it's the best way to attack modern offense. That is the difference. And so, do I think more blitzing is good? Potentially. I think Quay Walker could excel as a blitzer. I think Devondre Campbell could excel as a blitzer. I think there's plenty of interesting things they could do with it's interesting that in the second half of last season, when they played their best, they're playing some traditional cover 2 stuff, some Tampa 2 stuff that back in the 90s and early 2000s was really, really popular. And one of the things was, yes, big play avoidance. That was there. Press on the outside, physical. That was there. And then you had these pass rushers that you do, Simeon Rice in Tampa, Warren Sapp along the interior. You had these guys that could get after the quarterback. You didn't always have to blitz. Derek Brooks was not a killer blitzer. That's not what he did. He was a coverage linebacker. That was a 4-3 look. It was different. But the NFL is cyclical. And so to go back to some of those core principles in a league now that is finding ways to combat this same idea, it's interesting to me. It's interesting to me. Whether or not they can make it all work, I guess we'll see. I want to talk about some of the players who stand the most to gain this weekend and the players with the most on the line. We will do that in just a second. Shaving is one of those tricky things for me because I'm on camera every day. Even if you don't watch me on YouTube, I'm on YouTube. And so I have to make sure my face looks right. And it also helps that, I have a wife that wants me to look nice and I want to look nice for me. And I don't want my toddler to go, "Daddy, what's on your face? What's going on?" In fact, when he was really little, I had a beard. I shaved it. And the first day that I shaved it, he looked at me and was like, "Who is that guy?" And guess what? You know who I trust with my face? My face is very important to me. Harry's. And I have for years. Harry's has been my razor of choice. Get better quality and a better price than other razors when you get Harry's delivered right to your door. I have my wife on Harry's, and then my wife got my mother-in-law, who we happen to be traveling with right now, also on Harry's. Like everyone in my family uses Harry's razor. The starter set is a $13 value for just $3 right now. $3 at harrys.com/NFL. It includes a 5-blade German-engineered razor, a weighted handle, foaming shave gel, and a travel cover. That travel cover is important. You misplace it, you don't have it, and you reach into your kit and you cut your finger. I've done it. I've been there. Don't do that. Scheduled delivery for refills as low as $2, half of what you pay for other blades. Not only is Harry's a high-quality shave, they do it at a fraction of a cost of other razors. Don't bother. Don't bother. Get a $13 starter set for just $3 at harrys.com/NFL. That's harrys.com/NFL for that $3 starter set. And thanks for making Locked On Packers your first listen every day. Every dayers. We are live tomorrow. We will be live after the game on our YouTube page. It is going to be a fun time. There's going to be a lot of 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th stringers who played. And so it's really just for the real, true sickos. I can't wait to see you all there. A couple of players who I think have a lot at stake here. And I think it is useful to frame it in terms of players with something to gain versus players with something to lose. Because not every player has something to lose, right? And not every player has something to gain. It depends on the position from which you are working. And I don't mean center versus linebacker versus corner. No, I mean the position on the roster. Where are you in the pecking order? How have you been playing? How have your peers been playing? And so when I think of someone with a lot to gain, given the position that they are in, Anthony Johnson Jr. is the first name that pops into my mind, except he's hurt. So he can't be someone with the most to gain right now because he's hurt. Is he even going to play? Okay, let's push that to the side then. The next name is Malik Heath, someone we've talked about a lot over the course of the last few weeks. We talked about going back to the spring. He was getting work with the ones yesterday. The ones. I think I mentioned this yesterday. The day before that, he was one of the starting receivers. They opened in a 2 tight end set. He was one of, I guess it was DeGuara, so I guess we're calling that 21. Either way, a heavy set with 2 receivers. He was one of the 2 receivers. If it were me, I would rather have Malik Heath than Samori Toure on this roster. And we don't have to pit one against another. It's not exactly a 1-to-1. Dontavian Wicks is hurt. Grant Dubose has been banged up. Maybe one of them winds up on IR and gets a red shirt. Maybe one of them, you make the 53, but you go on IR immediately following. Malik Heath goes out and has another really good game after another really good week of practice in which he's running with the first team offense. He can earn not only an opportunity to make this team, but an opportunity at real playing time because Wicks hasn't been able to stay healthy. Grant Dubose hasn't been able to stay healthy. And then you're talking about the fourth receiver job, the third boundary receiver job with Samori Toure, who is frankly just not the same kind of player in terms of quality. I have not seen anything from Samori Toure that makes me believe this year he'll be better than I think Malik Heath can be. So for me, that's a lot to gain. If not only can you gain a roster spot, but a meaningful role on the team, that is an enormous amount to gain as a player. Go out, make a couple catches, make a play with the ball in your hands, maybe. That could be the thing that separates you. I am fascinated to see what they're able to put together here with Malik Heath. There are some other players who I considered here, like someone like Carrington Valentine doesn't qualify for me because Eric Stokes probably not going to start the season on the roster. So he just has a spot. Like that spot is delivered. And when Eric Stokes does get healthy, Carrington Valentine has no chance to be ahead of him. Just doesn't. It's not happening. Emmanuel Wilson, can he play his way onto this team? I don't know. I don't think so. I think if he's going to make the team, it's already happened. And Matt LaFleur said he already knows who the starting safety is next to Darnell Savage. So we're not talking about who can earn that job. It would be, someone like Anthony Johnson Jr. earns the opportunity to then continue to compete for that job when inevitably whoever that other player is, we think it's Rudy Ford at this point. He got benched last year. Unfortunately, and I hope he succeeds. I hope he plays really well. But chances are the body of work says that's probably not going to happen. So who's going to be next in line? Well, you'd like it to be a draft pick, someone who has a ton of talent and has flashed in these preseason games, certainly more than Tarvarius Moore and Jonathan Owens. He's hurt. Okay, can't do that. But there is another name that I think is really intriguing. And I didn't want to do a whole segment on offensive line play again. I feel like I have beaten that to death. And even the football sickos are like, okay, we're going to do offensive line again. But Rasheed Walker stack one more really great game together. And we saw yesterday in practice the lineup of Bakhtiari at left tackle, Elton Jenkins at left guard, Zach Tom at center, John Runyon Jr. at right guard, and Rasheed Walker at right tackle. If they think Walker can play right tackle and play it at a high level, if he's already past Yosh Nijman on the left tackle depth chart, it's not hard to imagine he has done so on the right tackle depth chart as well, though they haven't really seen him play as much right tackle. If he can do it, like let's say he goes out and he plays right tackle in this game, even if against meh players, and looks like the guy that they've seen over the last few weeks and really going back a year, he put together a really strong end of last year's preseason. Maybe that gets the Packers to make a decision on the starting lineup. Like that is a meaningful change that you can affect. The starting lineup. So, it is again just preseason, but if he goes out and he's dominant and he's been really awesome, I think Zach Tom playing tackle is the optimal outcome here, but we talked about this yesterday with the Caleb Jones roster question. Zach Tom's best position on this team is probably left tackle, but that's David Bakhtiari's spot. In a year, maybe that's Zach Tom, and maybe Rasheed Walker is your right tackle, and maybe all you're doing is fast-tracking Walker being your right tackle while you give Zach Tom a chance to upgrade your center position. And it's back to the conversation we were having originally. Is the upgrade you're getting from Zach Tom balance out the downgrade you're getting from Zach Tom to whoever is playing right tackle. And I have said, that I can see it both ways. I think he's more valuable at right tackle, but if you think Yosh Nijman is a really good player, if you think that battle is close, I get it. I think if they go with the Walker at right tackle, it has to be number one about him, but number two, that things with Josh Myers have just gone off the rails. And they're just like, it can't be this guy. It can't be this guy. I don't know if that's where we are. So if Rasheed Walker plays really well again, maybe he can make it about him where he says, I'm playing good enough that you can feel really good about me playing right tackle. And that makes it easier to shift Zach Tom. The flip side of all of this is guys like Josh Myers who have the most to lose. The most to lose. We're going to talk about that in just a second on Locked On Packers. August is here, and you know what that means. The official start of fantasy football drafting month. Get championship ready for your home league by trying out Best Ball on Underdog Fantasy. All you have to do is one live snake draft. No waivers, no trades. Underdog sets your best lineup every week. Try it out with Underdog's Best Ball Mania Tournament, the largest fantasy football contest of all time. It's back and bigger than ever with $15 million of total prizes up for grabs, including an absurd $3 million going to the winner. Last year, the winner drafted their team in July, so don't wait around. Visit Underdog Fantasy or find them in the App Store and sign up with the promo code Locked On to get your first deposit doubled up to $100. That's Underdog Fantasy. Promo code Locked On. And thanks for making Locked On Packers your first listen every day. Everydayers. Go sign up for Subtext with us at Locked On Packers. And check out Locked On Sports today. It's the biggest stories in sports in under 20 minutes. Our network is the best. It is the best and deepest bench of local experts. So let us give you the biggest stories in sports as told by our local experts in under 20 minutes. All of that, Locked On Sports, today, wherever you get podcasts. So, players with something to lose. I started the segment with so. If you watch the live stream, you know that is a verbal tick I am trying to get out of my vocabulary. We did, obviously, with Lily Zhao last year for Zhao You Doing, and we donated money to charity in honor of trying to stop saying obviously. We may have to do that with so. We may have to do that with so I can stop starting segments with so. Moving on. I almost said it again. Moving on. Players with the most to lose. So I don't want to put Josh Myers here because we just had the Josh Myers discussion, but he's worth mentioning. I don't want to have a whole conversation about what went wrong and all that stuff. But if Rasheed Walker is awesome and there's even just the slightest miscue there, it's not going to go great for him. It's really not. So his job, his starting spot is on the line. Whoever the other safeties are, like Tarvarius Moore and Jonathan Owens, Dallin Leavitt, they could go from safety 3 to off the roster with one performance. And this is part of the discussion we were having about these safeties. It's like, okay, if none of them are very good, how many do you actually need? And what roles do you need them to play? What roles do you want them to play? So if this is all really close, and I think we are led to believe it is all pretty close. That's why you're seeing, different guys getting snaps of the ones every day. Then you really could go from first to worst in one game. You have one bad game and it's like, okay, out. He's out. Because none of these guys are that good. And so if none of these guys are that good, that means the difference between who you are cutting and who you could just pick up on the street for nothing, who you could pick off someone's practice squad, may be non-existent. In fact, you may be able to upgrade off of someone else's practice squad. So those guys have a lot on the line in this game. Jonathan Ford is another player. And we look at this roster, they have a ton of penetrators up front. Devontae Wyatt, Carl Brooks, and Kobe Wooden. Those guys are go mess stuff up in the backfield guys. They're not hold the point of attack guys. Jonathan Ford is showing he has some disruptive capabilities in practice. But is that enough? Is that enough? Because he's just not as good as those other guys, as Kobe Wooden and Carl Brooks. He's not going to jump Devontae Wyatt. He's not getting the starting lineup ahead of TJ Slayton. So, where does that leave him? And where does that leave him relative to the other players on the roster? You have to show such like special teams value. He played special teams at Miami. Can you get in and block a kick? That'd be awesome. Well, if you don't, you might get cut. Like, you might just not make the team. And so to me, when I'm thinking of guys with the most to lose, I'm thinking of guys who are either talking about playing time versus not playing, or being on the team versus not. And that means you have to show out. This running back room, you have to become indispensable. Like, I just don't think there's a reasonable case for keeping one of these guys if you think they're all kind of the same. If you think they're all kind of the same, then just wait and get one out of the practice squad, maybe two out of the practice squad even, and figure it out from there. If you're not really risking that much, then you have to set yourself apart. And if you don't, you're out. And someone like Emmanuel Wilson, who may have been the most impressive back between Patrick Taylor, Tyler Goodson, all those guys. We didn't even get a chance to see Lou Nichols. He's been hurt the whole camp. I liked some of the things I saw in college, but like no track record in the NFL. If those guys just all look the same, it makes it really easy to cut the guys that have not been here. Tyler Goodson has. Patrick Taylor has. If they're about the same as these other guys, you're going to take the guy with the institutional knowledge who understands what we're trying to accomplish here, all that stuff. The last one. I don't think the Packers are going to replace Anders Carlson. But if he just goes out and is a disaster again, he misses 2 more extra points, it gets sticky. It gets sticky. Now, Pro Football Focus just did a show the other day, a podcast, where they were talking about kickers and how kickers are rarely given the opportunity as young players to develop. They're rarely given the opportunity to go through growing pains. Mason Crosby was allowed to go through some early growing pains and became the best kicker in Packers history, certainly modern history. The most clutch kicker. You have to give this kid time. But if he goes out and misses, a 38-yard field goal and then 2 extra points, you have to start having a conversation. I don't think we're there yet. But given some of the performances that we've seen over the last few weeks, it can't be ruled out that he just goes out and blacks out. And it's like, okay, he just can't do it. He can't do it. Now, his brother was in this position. Biffed it against the Packers with a chance to win it on a game winner, on a chip shot field goal, misses it. The Vikings cut him the next day. He latches on with the Raiders, and 2 years later, he's an all-pro. That's the pedigree we're talking about. That's the bloodline we're talking about. I'm not saying it's going to be the same situation, but I do think it's worth mentioning that if this goes sideways, just the way the NFL works is if he has another bad game, they're going to bring a kicker in, at least for a workout, and see what they got. And if in midseason this team is playing well, but the kicking game is hurting them, another bad performance is just going to make it that much closer, that much easier for them to say, you know what, we tried it. It was fun. It didn't work. I'm sorry. Bye. All right, back tomorrow. We are live on YouTube after the game. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts, you'll find Locked On Packers. And anytime you want to come hang out with us live on our YouTube page, which we will be doing tomorrow, you can do that over on our Locked On Packers YouTube page, so you can stay Locked On Packers.